Yeah, for me, I always say I'm kind of like the anti-real estate agent. In a lot of ways, it's not that big of a difference between being an investor and being an agent. It's really just the vehicle and the mechanism for how that transaction is done.
I cannot believe that a simple act of seeing an article that talked about the top agents on social media right now led me to talking to you today, Jake, because when I pulled your numbers and your team's numbers after I read that article before I contacted you, it said that you, before the age of 30, your team had closed over $300 million in sales. It's almost, I joke all the time, it's like it's a pinky out number. You have to like say it with an evil laugh, but Jake, you've closed a huge amount of business with your team. Obviously, you didn't do it alone, but it's a huge number, especially before the age of 30. So wanted to say first, welcome to the show, but now I want to know how you did it. Like, how did you get started? What's your origin story? I mean, we want to know everything.
Awesome, Matt. No, I'm very happy to be here. Very excited. So my real estate journey started really before I was an agent. My family's background has always been in real estate. I grew up, my father owned a construction company growing up. And so I really kind of started my real estate education at a very young age. I remember on the day before Thanksgiving when we'd have off from school, going with him and working on construction sites, or every time it snowed, we'd go, and he owned a bunch of investment properties. We'd go and we'd do like snow removal and help him with management when we were off from school and stuff like that. So I always say that's kind of where my interest in real estate began. I started as an agent. I got licensed in 2015, so I'm on year 9 now. But my real estate career, so to speak, it took me about 2 to 2.5 years before I really decided to go full time. I got in originally just to source deals on the investment side. I think a lot of people who have that interest in real estate investment, they think, oh, if I'm going to be an investor, why don't I go out and get my license? And what I found out pretty quickly was if I was going to have that license and I was going to actually be active in the business, I might as well really be educated, go full time, and see where it goes. It was kind of like a dipping of the toes in the water, so to speak, in the beginning. And then over time, as I kind of got more and more serious about it, I really started to see results. And that's what made me decide, okay, I think there's something here. Let me really dedicate myself to this. And really, like I said, it was in the beginning just kind of trying to look for whether it be off-market deals, whether it be building relationships, all of that type of stuff in the beginning when I got my license. So it wasn't like I said, I was 20 years old and I wasn't like, oh, let me go out and become a real estate agent, right? Because I don't think anybody who really grows up is thinking that's the career that they're going to end in or end up in. But that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah. Well, so just a huge commonality. And I think this is something that I'm seeing in agents that are successful in 2023, 2024, is that a lot of people really specialize or started by specializing in investments. And the two interesting things I think about that are, number one, when you specialize in investments, you're really at the heart of what real estate is all about, which is building wealth through owning property. And there's about a million ways to do it, but that's usually how the curiosity gets stoked. But then number two, in this specific market that we're in right now, the best way to make money is by finding opportunities and pitching those opportunities to clients or connecting those opportunities to clients versus what most agents unfortunately seem to be trying to do is to sell clients on themselves or to sell clients on the idea of buying a house. And I think that when you're in a high interest rate environment, when you're in a competitive environment, those things are just harder to do. And you're really trying to make 3 sales. When you focus on investments, it's an opportunity. It's money. It's black and white. The numbers either work or they don't. And it becomes a whole different conversation. So it's cool that you started that way, because I'm sure you've kind of kept that vibe and that vision the entire time.
Yeah, for me, I always say I'm kind of like the anti-real estate agent because honest to God, I got into the business largely because my father was like, I hate most real estate agents and I have a hard time building relationships with them. They don't speak the investment language, the new construction language, and they don't have the background in it. And I'm tired of people kind of trying to bring me overpriced deals. And then when I try and sell something, they want to sell it for 80 cents on the dollar just to make a quick buck and get the sale done. So I always say I'm kind of like the anti-agent. I also think from the investment side of things, there's so many parallels to people who are doing a high volume of investment transactions to being an agent. I know a lot of my friends who are in the investment side, they just invest, whether they're wholesalers, flippers, buy and hold investors. But a lot of what they're doing to source deals and then going through the transaction process, they're moving real estate just like an agent does. They're solving a specific problem for a homeowner just as much as anybody else as an agent is. And so a lot of the tactics that I deployed in my business early on, I learned from my background in investing beforehand, whether it was direct mail marketing, whether it was lead generation, all of those different things, even just how to source and track my business from a numbers perspective. And some of the systems I still use in my business today were from whether it be courses I took as an investor or from other investors that I know who use that on the investment side. So in a lot of ways, it's not that big of a difference between being an investor and being an agent. It's really just the vehicle and the mechanism for how that transaction is done that really is what draws the difference. And then obviously, if you're a buy and hold investor, the wealth building part where you're actually accumulating the assets is a lot different, because I always tell every single flipping client and wholesaling client that I have, you're in the same business as me. If you go out and you don't do your transactions this month or next year, the income stops, right? If I stop selling, the income goes away. As an investor, if you're buying and holding and accumulating, that's where the residual income comes in. So a lot of the systems and mechanisms are the same from the investment and the agency side of things. Yeah. So obviously the journey on social media from when I got serious about it, which was really, we were doing things on social media, even on the investment side, before I even got into business as an agent. So I've always been a big proponent that social media is where all of the attention is. And therefore, as a business owner, any business owner, regardless of what business you're in, you need to have a presence there. That's how you can speak directly to your consumer. And I'm very, very big on brand. So like I always tell everybody, you have a personal brand, right? Whether you're a business person or not, your brand is just what people think of you when you're not around, right? Like if you say Coca-Cola, you have a thought of what that means. If you say Mercedes-Benz, you have a thought of what that means. Well, people have a thought of what you are as a person and who you are as a person, whether you're in business or you're not, right? So like you have to first off think that you'll have a brand regardless of if you want one or not. Secondly, you have to take control of that brand, right? If you're going to have it anyway, you might as well have that. So probably like, what the hell is he talking about? Why is he talking? Because I think in sales, what deters a lot of people is you think that when you go and you start in your business, everybody's going to come and support you, but they have preconceived ideas of who you are as a person. And if they don't think that you're someone who's trustworthy, or if you're someone who is reliable, they're not going to do business with you. So you have to do business and find other people to do business with. For me, they probably were like, what the hell is he doing? Like, why is this 20-year-old kid in an industry dominated by people in their 50s and 60s? None of us were interested at 20, 21, 22 years old in real estate. Everybody was, in college and everything else. So I think for me, it was tough. I mean, on the flip side of things, I was very fortunate because I was always an athlete growing up. I was always, the captain of my sports team and things like that. So I always was in a position where I think I had some level of respect. So people would listen to me to some extent. Now, maybe not 40, 50, 60-year-old people who are buying houses, but some of the younger people, which is why in the beginning I did focus on the younger demographic, right? My primary client base in the beginning was first-time home buyers, and specifically people who were potentially going to be renting or potentially buying condos. And I helped them to buy multifamilies using my investment background. I kind of changed their mindset and went into buying two-family homes where they could live in one unit and rent out the other and live for free. And that was like the niche that I developed in the beginning based on who I was as a person and what my background was. And that was intentional for my friends and family and everything else that, I was speaking within a sphere of knowledge that I was comfortable within and not pretending to know something that I didn't know. Let's put it that way.
Real estate has a lot of contracts. I want this podcast to have a social contract as well. Here's what I need from you. If you're listening to the show and you get something valuable out of it, or you hear something that you think, that's awesome, I want you to send me a DM on Instagram, or if you find my email, send it that way. The more feedback that I get helps me to put together better shows and attract better guests.
I think it's interesting, right? Like, you stoked people's curiosity. So it's like a new, younger agent posting on social media. People are like, why is this guy here? What's he talking about? Even if they knew you already, like, why would I listen to him? But then they click in it because they're curious, and maybe they click on it because they're haters, and that's okay, right? And they see, oh, Jake bought a multi-unit. Jake is living in one unit and renting the other ones out. That's a great idea. Well, if Jake can do it, I can do it. Oh, well, now I'm hooked, and I want to reach out to Jake to find out if he can help me do that. And it's almost like a very specific opportunity that you're creating for them, because so few people at that age are doing that now they're like, I work with Jake, I can do it. And you're kind of like creating that American dream for them.
And what ends up happening is the people who do it have a specific type of mindset, right? So if you're 22, 24 years old and you're buying a two-family, you're probably interested in finance, you're interested in business, you're interested in investing. Who do you hang out with? People who also have those interests. So all of their friends started buying multifamilies as well. And then I became the go-to guy for everybody between the age of 20 and 35 who wanted to become, a quote unquote house hacker, right? Where they live in one unit and rent out the other. And that was really how I built my business in the beginning. And that led to building relationships with bigger clientele to where, all of a sudden I'm selling 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 unit buildings. And all of a sudden these $200,000 and $250,000 two-family sales are becoming 1.1 and $1.4 million multifamily commercial building sales. So that was kind of the gateway to a bigger type of transaction, and also just spending a lot of time getting face-to-face and educating people. Like, I would just go around to real estate investment groups and meet with people and say, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee. Let's see, if our goals align. Let's talk about what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do, and just kind of learn about what people were trying to do. I mean, I had so many clients who came to me and were like, hey, Jake, I want to buy a house. I'm trying to save up some money. I think that, I could probably buy in the next 18 months. I had one client who was 20 years old when I met him. He said, I want to buy in the next 18 to 24 months. He bought 3 houses in the next 12 because he realized that he could buy one, roll that into the next one, roll that into the next one. And by the age of 23 years old, he owned 4 houses. So it's one of those things that once people understood the process, and obviously me as I always say I'm not a salesperson, I'm an advisor. As their advisor, I help them through that process, and they're going to tell everybody about that. So that was just how to generate referrals and everything else.
I love that. I have an agent in my market, and his thing is very similar to that. And his whole printout or digital flyer that he gives people is, this is what your wealth will look like 10 years from now if you buy today, and then again in 2 years, again in 2 years. And this is what your wealth will look like if you rent for the next 5 and then start your homeownership journey then. And it's extremely powerful, whether he's meeting with someone who's 20 or whether he's meeting with someone that's 60, a 60-year-old first-time home buyer. Because if home prices go up on average 5% a year, this is what it looks like. If it's 10% a year, this is what it looks like. If your initial down payment on that first property is between 3 and 20, this is what the math looks like. And it's just such a fascinating place to be. So I think we missed something that I want everyone to understand first. And we missed like the areas that you serve, because we're talking a lot about converting renters into buyers. And in some markets, it's easier, harder, et cetera. So what is your market? And then what feeds your market? I guess I want to give people an example of the price points where you sell, and then kind of the rent points where your clients are coming from or are accustomed to.
So it's obviously, I'll say this, my market is, we're in the Hudson Valley, New York State. So we are essentially, once you leave New York City, north, where everything north of the city, our coverage area specifically is about 75 miles north of the city and south, right? So once you get outside of New York City, we cover basically that entire region. So it is a large region. We've done transactions in the city, in the boroughs as well, but most of our focal point is, I'd say, in the 50 to 75 mile range north of New York City, north of Manhattan. That is our largest driver. All 5 boroughs, we could break down what boroughs drive what type of buyers, right? Like we can break it down to, we have a large weekend home market now, but we also have a large, and our biggest driver of our market is people leaving New York City and moving into the Hudson Valley full time, right? So depending on which county you're in determines the price point. Like right now I'm in Dutchess County. That's where I grew up. That's where I'm from originally. And when I got into the business, the median price point was 240,000 in 2015. Now it's 450. So it's grown significantly over the last 9 years. Now we have markets outside of New York City that the median price point is, in Westchester County, 1.1 million. So it's a much more expensive market, again, driven by New York City. But because of the cost of living and because of the cost of renting, the renters, it's still much more affordable to buy, right? So for example, in New York City, an apartment that's a 1 or 2 bedroom could cost you anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 a month. In Lower Westchester, it's the same. It's not very cheap. It's not much cheaper. In Dutchess County, you could rent a 2 bedroom and it's anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And we have luxury apartments that are $3,500 a month, and you're still 75 miles north of Manhattan. Whereas you can go out and buy a mortgage, or, buy a house, and obviously interest rates have driven up the cost of that significantly, but it's still cheaper to buy than it is to rent. And then specifically, especially for first-time home buyers, if they're buying multifamilies, we can still get it to the point where you're only paying under $1,000 a month to have what's comparable to an apartment that you would rent for, say, $2,500 to $3,000 a month. So it is much more affordable for people to buy than it is to rent. And that's been kind of our messaging over the last 10 years, call it. And that's what's driving a lot of our sales. We have a very low inventory. I know everything around the country is varying right now. I was just on the phone with someone who has 8 months of inventory in Florida. And in our market, we only have 2 months. And that's kind of across the board. No matter if you're just outside the city or 90 miles north of the city, really New York as a whole has an extremely low inventory problem. And that's because New York City, a lot of the people in New York City are leaving the city. It's not as bad as what you see on the news. Everybody says New York City's dead. It's definitely not dead. It's crazier and busier than it's ever been in New York City itself. A lot of that's driven by people coming from other states and internationally to New York City, a lot of foreign nationals moving to the city. And then the people who've been in the city for 5-10 years saying, you know what, it's time to leave. I mean, this is a trend that we've seen for the last 10 years. In 2015 and 2016, 60% of our buyers above 400,000 were coming from New York City. So it's not a COVID-driven trend. It's not a politics-driven trend. It's a trend that's been happening really historically forever. It's just been amplified by remote work. It's amplified by people's ability to commute 2 days a week instead of 5. So all of a sudden that hour and 25-minute commute isn't that bad, 2 or 3 days a week. And so that's kind of been the largest driver of our market. And we have no inventory across the board. You go out to Long Island, you go into the Hudson Valley, even in New York City. New York City's in more of a balanced market, but still not a ton of inventory to choose from. I mean, we'll have buyers who are looking for 6 to 12 months and can't find something.
And I mean, we're very similar to that where I am in Michigan. I mean, we're at about a month of inventory on the west side of the state right now. And it's been that way for almost 2.5 years now. We got down to half a month of inventory. But what I find really interesting about what you're saying, and what I want people to take away from that, is that you guys have a tremendously large understanding of where your buyers are coming from and what's forcing those migration patterns. And from a marketing perspective and from a branding perspective, no matter where you're operating in the country, you need to understand that so you can, number one, place your marketing materials in the right place. And number two, so you can craft the right message. If you know that the remote situation for work is changing, if you know what companies are laying off, what companies are doing huge hiring sprees, you can really start to figure out where you need to place more marketing to get in front of the right people. And you guys obviously know your numbers, and that's been extremely helpful for you in placing people into the right places, pitching the right type of investment ideas, making those kind of rent to buy comparisons with very specific amounts. And I love hearing that. So you talked a little bit about when you first got into business, your sphere wasn't using you. And maybe that was because of your age. Maybe it was because of something else, but you fixed the problem. So when your sphere, this is a problem I think all agents have. They get into the business. I ask them in my first meeting with them when they're brand new, hey, why'd you get into real estate? They're like, oh, I wanted flexibility and independence. That's a terrible answer, by the way. And then after they tell me that, and I'm like, awesome, cool, I say, where did you think your business was going to come from, or where do you think it's going to come from? And they always say, my sphere. And I say, well, your sphere probably already knows the 3,000 other agents, but also your sphere might not want to work with you simply because you're new, or they're going to tell you what, I'm not going to be your first sale. Go figure it out somewhere else. And if you're still in business in a year, call me then. So it doesn't always work. It's not always that easy. What did you do to solve that problem?
So it's funny that you say that, because I was just going to say too, anybody who's in the business, if you've been in the business, let's say less than 5 years, you will eventually get business from your sphere if you're in the business long enough. Most people leave the business before they actually get to see the fruits of their labor, so to speak, with their sphere, because it does take 4, 5, 6 years sometimes for people to actually say, oh, you're still in the business? Let's call Jake. Let's call Matt. Let's go do some business with them. For me, it was very intentional. I was trying to be as tactical as possible about getting in person and getting in front of people that I didn't know, but were maybe an arm's length from the transaction, right? So I would go and join networking groups with other business owners in the area, people who I knew that were giving out referrals or interacting with people who could potentially be buying a home or selling a home, right? So
I have to pause you. I have to pause you right there, because what you just said was huge and we need to expound on that. So you said you figured out what types of people in your community were poised and already prone to giving out referrals, and you surrounded yourself with those types of people. And I really want to make sure people understand that, because there's so many people out there who are not referral minded, who are not in an industry that they need referrals or that they think about actively referring people. But if you can surround yourself with people who are already good at making referrals to other service professionals, and then get them to like you, or then figure out a way to offer value to them, you're at least connecting to the right type of people who could refer you. And I love that. So I interrupted you, but I needed to shine your light on your brilliance for a second. Okay,
and
keep going.
Some of those, so just to give some examples, right? I went out and I'd go and meet with contractors and construction workers, right? These are people who are going in the door of homes that are being renovated, that people may say, oh, well, why are you renovating the house? Well, we're planning to sell it in 6 months. Hello, right? I mean, insurance agents, obviously there's obvious ones with, mortgage people, but attorneys. I have some of my best attorneys are people that I developed relationships with. And yes, I referred them business in the beginning, but guess what? Now they're personally my clients, and they're people that I'll get 4 to 6 referrals a year from. So it was just going out and networking, and not just networking. Like, people hear this and they go to networking events and they just grab a bunch of business cards and they just go around. Hey, I'm Jake. Hey, I'm Jake. Hey, and they just do that. Right. Exactly. And I was always like, hey, Matt, it's great to meet you. This is what I do. Let me grab your number. I'd love to get a cup of coffee with you in a couple of days. Hear about what you're doing. I always made it I'd love to hear about how I could help you out. I'd love to hear about how I could send my clients your way. I'd love to hear about how I could refer you business, right? Because naturally, if you go and sit down with someone for a half hour, 45 minutes, and you're saying, Matt, let me hear about your business. What do you do? How can I send you referrals? At the end of that conversation, they're going to say, well, how can I reciprocate, right? How can I do business with you? Exactly. And so it was a lot of getting to build personal relationships and then following up. So many people go out and meet with people and they never follow up. They never even send that thank you email. Hey, it was great meeting you. Hey, thank you for taking me out for a cup of coffee or for meeting for lunch. Just following up and saying, hey, how can I help you today? Right? Just going out and doing that over and over and over and over again. So many people want the lead gen funnel, right? They want to I want to run a Facebook ad and I want to bring in 100 leads and I'm going to run them through a CRM and they're going to have automated follow-up and I'm going to use artificial intelligence. They're going to do this. And then I'm going to have 5 sellers. It's just not how the business works. It's a relationship-based business. And the only way to really grow is to build relationships. And if you build a bunch of them, yeah, you might not get 10 referrals a year from one person, but if you have 10 people referring you once, that's all you need.
The Neighborhood Realtor Podcast is proudly made possible by the support of our sponsors, Treadstone Funding and Neighborhood Loans, 2 amazing Midwest mortgage companies that now have offices all around the country. If you're a real estate agent looking to partner with an amazing lender, DM me at mattmusky88 and I'll connect you with someone in your market. If you're a lender and you want to join the right mortgage company, DM me and I'll connect you as well.
Well, and I call that social capital, right? So I call it, I'm going to have X amount of meetings, and my goal is going to be to help those people as much as I can. I don't know that each meeting is going to get me a referral.
No,
But if
you
I
never
know
do.
that I have 10, it's going to be something. And I have this written down literally on my desk. And it says, how can I help you? What other businesses do you own? What kind of people can I refer you to? And then it ends with, I need your help. And every time I'm on the phone, I look at this to the left of my desk and think, do any of these questions make sense to interject into this conversation?
I love
And if
that.
it doesn't, and it's going to be awkward and weird, I don't do it because I'm not a weird salesperson. But I'd say that in 90% of my calls, I can organically get to one of those points. And just like you said, if I can find out how I can help you, might not even be business wise. You might be hiring someone. You might need a new CRM system, and you just want to talk about advice. Or, God, I had kids, and half my parent friends want to know like how we travel with kids because we do that a lot with our little ones. That's value. And then at the end, if I'm asking them for help, it's a lot more organic.
Yeah, and you don't feel they will never feel like people don't want to be sold, right? Nobody wants to be sold to. But they'll never feel that way. They will feel like they're doing you a favor, you're doing them a favor, you're building a relationship. It's natural to want to reciprocate, right? And that's like what you just highlighted right there is exactly what I'm saying. Like it's tactical, right? You can go and pick up the phone and call someone, but do you have intention behind the phone call? Do you have a strategy of where you want that conversation to go? Are you intentional about the questions that you ask and what you say? And that's having a game plan. And if you do that with relationships and with the people that you want to work with, and you're specifically focusing on the people that you want to do that with, right? Because I'm not just going out on the street and just meeting random people. I'm intentional about who I'm meeting with and who I'm investing my time with. And that's what will pay you the highest dividends.
So let's talk about this year. So, I mean, you and your partner have built the team up. You're doing well over $75 to $100 million a year in sales. Who are you looking forward to being intentional with? Like what types of people, businesses, community stuff in 2024? I mean, we got 9 months left. I'm sure you want to hit some record levels. Like what are you guys intentional about looking to this year?
So for me, from a like sales standpoint, right? For relationships I'm trying to develop within the business for the sales team. It's a lot of investors, developers, people who are maybe in an era right now with commercial real estate and with investment real estate where it's really hard to find good deals, right? I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to help these people. I literally just had a showing with a client after the end of the show, and they're like, the numbers just don't make sense. The cap rates are too low. The interest rates are too high. And I'm just basically like, hey, let's figure out a plan to go through your current portfolio and figure out ways to develop additional income within the properties that you already have. Right. So we're setting up a meeting to look at building an accessory dwelling unit on one of his properties to generate additional income with one of the builders that I work with. Right. So it's like looking at other ways to add value. I'm not going to get a sale out of that. I don't make any financial.
There's no commission for you in that.
No.
It's the long-term play of you get to sit down with your clients and be their financial expert, despite the fact that you're a real estate agent and not a financial advisor. It's super funny that you say this because we're a mortgage company and we email all of our clients once a year and ask them if they want to do an annual financial review. And we talk about investment properties, we talk about their portfolios, we talk about everything. And sometimes we're just like, dude, you need to put more into your 401k, you'll save on taxes. Or dude, you need to get referred to as so-and-so, or you need to sell this property, it's killing you. But you never know what's going to happen. And you're always adding value. So it's such a huge piece. And I love the fact that you guys are doing that.
So I go through all my clients and I do what's called an annual real estate review with them. And it's literally
shockingly similar.
I say to them, look, your financial advisor at least once a year will sit down with you, go through your assets, go through your income and look at where you can improve and what you can do to grow your financial wealth. This is, in a lot of cases, for a lot of people, their largest financial instrument, their largest financial asset. Why would you not, I always say I'm not a salesperson, I'm an advisor. Why, as their real estate advisor, would you not sit down with them and evaluate their real estate portfolio the exact same way? And that's exactly what we do. We sit down with them. We explain what's going on with the market. We show them where the reports are in terms of values and where the market's heading. We look at comparable sales. We don't make representations on value. It's not to say, hey, your house is worth $500,000. Your house is worth $1 million. If it may lead to that conversation, and it often does lead to a comparative market analysis, but it's really just overviewing the portfolio and staying top of mind. And guess what? if I sell someone a house in 2020 and I do that for 10 years straight, when they go to move in 2030, there's no shot in hell they're going to list that house with somebody else. So it's repeat business again. And to your point before with like, where are we tacticially, like development of relationships and things like that? One of the largest reasons that I started my podcast was to get tactical about building those relationships, because instead of me reaching out to a builder and saying, hey, I'd love to earn your business, it's much easier to reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to highlight your business and interview you for an hour about what you're doing in some of your upcoming local projects, something like that. Now I sit down with them for 30 to 45 minutes to an hour. And guess what? At the end of that conversation, we've now built a relationship that's going to continue into the future. And so it's not like, hey, I want to sell you. It's, hey, I want to build a relationship and figure out how I can highlight you and highlight your business.
I think, every salesperson out there, regardless of what you sell, you need a mechanism that lets you reach out to a random other successful person without being salesy. So if I want to reach out to you, of course I want to reach out to $100 million realtors. I reach out to you as, hey, let's do a podcast. You'd be a great guest. But it's the same thing like you're doing for builders. It's the same thing if you have a lot of agents do like a business of the month on social media. That is the easiest, smallest way to start doing that. But that way you can you can start with going through your past clients in your database to say, who owns a business or manages a business that I can reach out to? Start close to home. Number 2, where are the places you patronize, the local coffee shop you go to every day? And then number 3, once you get it going, look for VIPs that have the ability to be in those referral-minded spaces and feature them, harness that conversation, and then do it often. And oftentimes they'll feature you too. So Jake, I think anyone listening should have at least 30 ideas of ways that they can grow their business. And I'm hoping a couple of light bulb moments. But if they want to check out your podcast, or if they have buyers who are moving to the New York State area, how would they get a hold of you?
So easiest way is probably through Instagram. It's just my name, Jake Garay. I also have a YouTube channel. That's where you can see like the full length podcast. It's podcasts on everywhere. You can listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, everything like that. And yeah, I would say probably just shoot me a DM on Instagram. All my contact information is there as well. You can give me a call, send me an email. I love talking to people. It's my favorite part of the business. I love talking about the business. I could do this for the next 12 hours if you couldn't tell. So yeah, that's probably the easiest way.
So would it be okay to assume that if a realtor refers you a really nice, fat, juicy $1 million deal, you will take them golfing somewhere good? I know you're an avid golfer.
Oh yes. Anyone who wants to golf, that's more important. Just call me about golf and we'll talk about that.
It's very important to have priorities. So I resonate with that. I'll hit you up for our pickleball tournament in a couple months, because
I also love that.
You're working on that, right? You got to get good at country club sports in general if you want to be a networker.
That's a whole other conversation. I joined a country club just to generate leads and referrals. It's paid for my membership every single year with relationships that I've built and sales that I've developed through that.
Well, I almost it's killing me because I got to go there. So country clubs were a big thing, I talked about with realtors, 15 plus years ago when I first got in. You joined one now. It's paying for your membership. Walk me through just 1 minute of like what people should know about like joining social clubs, country clubs.
Join the club, right? It may hurt in the beginning, but be active. You can't join it and then never show face. I joined and I got involved in all like the golf leagues and everything else, went to all the events, and guess what happens? You build relationships, never talked about business, never asked for business once. Naturally, when people find out eventually what you do, they'll ask, and then you continue the conversation. And really what it boils down to is we're in a business, thankfully, that we have high ticketed sales. So if you make a couple of sales, it typically, I'm not joining, $100,000 a year country club, but if you join a country club that's reasonably priced, or a social club that's reasonably priced, couple of sales a year will pay for that membership, and it's relationship capital. And then it's also great. We do client appreciation events at those that country club. So it's another great place to bring the clients and bring out clients. And there's a whole world of possibilities just in that alone. I know people whose entire business strategy is just joining social clubs and going there and building relationships. So it's, again, just getting in front of people and building those relationships.
And I feel like we could summarize this entire episode by saying, Jake, you have a lot of irons in the fire. And we've come to talk about 10 different ways that you guys get business. And that excites me. And so that's what I want everyone to take. Take one of Jake's ideas, add it to your strategy list, have one more iron in the fire, pick up 1 or 2 more buyers, generate some more listings. The more listings we all generate, the more homes we can all sell. And that is a wrap for today's episode. Go leave us a review on the podcast store. I can't pay you for it because I'm too cheap, but please do it. It'll help us get more great guests like Jake. Jake, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it.